there, I'm April Lorette, a Kibo Automation Assistant Trainee, and you're welcome to my course on automation. Today, we'll be learning how to build automations using Zapier. What is Zapier? To me, Zapier is the ultimate automation builder. That is, Zapier builds automations, and this guy is really good at what he does. What is automation? Etymology, automatos, a Greek word, meaning acting of oneself. And if you break that down, that gives you auto, which is equals to automatic, which is equals to minimal human effort, which is equals to lesser time, which is equals to smarter work. And we have shown process, activity, work. So when you put that together, it means you're making an activity start on its own. You're making an activity, a process, work on its own. And, for you to build automation, this really helps because you need to actually know what an automation is. You can't build something that you don't even know. So automation is basically making a process, an activity, or a work act on itself. And when you're making it act on itself, you're reducing human efforts to the minimalist possible. And you're making this work smarter, especially when it's repetitive tasks and you're spending less time. Who is Zapier? Integrations for over 7,000 web applications, effective automation of recurring tasks, ease of use, user flexibility and authority in the sense that you have you have the utmost power over what you're automating. You have the utmost power over whichever applications you're integrating. You decide how you want it to be. Variety of flexible user plans in the sense that, for example, depending on the amount of zaps you want to create, because that is what it's called in Zapier. When you create an automation that's between different workflows, you create an automated workflow. It's called a zap. So once you want to create zaps, perhaps you're the kind of person that's, or maybe your workload, you create an average of 1,000 zaps per month, there's a plan for you. And perhaps if you're creating something really mild, like 10 zaps, there's also a plan for you. The case study is the Employee Time of Request Automation Project. The project objectives to utilize Airtable as a database to store and manage time of request, approval status, and leave days balances. To automate the time of request process, and that includes notifying managers via email when employees apply for time off, facilitate managers' approval or rejection of time of request within the Airtable, notify employees of the approval status via email, and deduct the approved time of days from the employee's total allocated leave days, which is 22 days, with updates reflected in Airtable and added in the email sent to the employee. The automation process. Now we've spoken about the entire process of the project. Now you understand that, for example, we mentioned Airtable, building Airtable base for the data. We already have all that on ground. So right now we're focused about the automation process. What does the automation process encompass? It is broken out into three. First, you need to automate the email to the manager when an employee submits a time of request form. Then the next thing is, as you're automating that email to the manager synchronously at the same time, you have to automate the employee time of request form response to the Airtable based time of request table. So as that form is filled and the notification is sent to the email, the data is transferred to the Airtable base, and not just any table, the time of request table. That way, everything is working synchronously and there isn't any loopholes or loss of data. And the third one is to automate the email to the employee when the manager has reviewed the time of request on the Airtable base. Now, the first thing you need to do is to sign up. You go to Zapier.com, you sign up on Zapier. And if you're already signed up, you just sign in with your email and password. Then you click Zaps at the left-hand menu and you click Create Zaps. And it's going to bring out a drop-down. So you just select automated workflows because that's what you want to do. Now, it's broken down into two. You have the trigger and the action. Each of those things are talking about applications. Your trigger is an app. Your action is an app. Gets down straight. Trigger, action, applications. So the next thing you want to do is, what app should be the trigger? What makes this app the trigger? What app should be the action? What makes this app the action? The trigger is the app that an occurrence takes place in. So if, okay, I want this thing to happen in this app, it's going to be the trigger. Now, what is that thing that you want to occur somewhere else as a result of something as the action? That is to say, the action is the consequence of the trigger. If this form is filled, what do I want to happen as a result of that form being filled? That's your action. The app you want something to occur in as a result of the occurrence. Now we're delving straight to the automation process, which remember, it's broken out into three. The first one, to automate email to manager when the employee submits time of request form. You have your trigger, which is the app, in this case, Google Form. And that is when the request form is submitted by an employee. And then you have your action, which is the Gmail, and that is the email being sent to the manager. Now, you have trigger, remember, and you have action. We've spoken surfacely. WhatsApp is the trigger, WhatsApp is the action. Now we're delving into the trigger process, actually. We're delving deep into the trigger process, actually. So now the trigger process and the action process it's broken down into 4 steps, or 4 steps for all applications you use. Regardless of the application you use, it's broken down into the step, which is app and events, accounts, trigger, and test. The app and events, in this sense, is new form response. The account is your personal and functional Gmail account. And bear in mind that this account must also be the email used in creating a form. I'll go over it again. The account is your personal and functional Gmail account, and also the email used in creating the form. The trigger is your time of request form, and the test must be successful before proceeding to the next stage. That is why the account is really important, because more often than not, if the test isn't successful, it's because there's an issue with the account you use. Then you move to the action. The action, like I mentioned, it's pretty much broken down into that brackets. We have the app and events, the account, the action, and the test. And to test this app created. Then for the app in this scenario, you're sending an email. So the app is Gmail. The app and events is to send email. The account is your personal and functional Gmail account. And also remember the email used in creating the form. The action, 2, you select the manager's email input on the form. The email, the CC and the BCC, whoever you want it to be, CC and BCC too. In this scenario, there wasn't any need for that. The from is the sender's email. Who is it coming from? The from name is the sender's full name. What's the name of the sender? Reply to. Now, you notice that each of these things, they're called selects. So you should pay attention that there's a form response you've selected already in the trigger. For you to test the trigger, you need to have a response, at least one response for it to be tested on. So that response is going to be used to create this ZAP as a sample of what you want to be consecutively done each time an employee fills a form, each time the automation is to be run on a form being submitted. So for this, you need to select, not impute. Remember, I'll go over it again. You're not imputing any data, you're selecting from the sample form response. Now, why you're selecting is such that regardless of whoever that's using this form, because the data is going to differ by each employee, our names will differ, IDs will differ, but in this scenario, it's going to be selecting that particular section of that form and sending the data, using the data. So it's not going to be selecting the data, it's going to be selecting that section of the form. That's why you're selecting. You have the signature, the label, the mailbox, the attachments, you test it, you name, and you publish it up. We go to the second one, to automate employee time of request form response to Airtable time of request base. Now you have your trigger. Your trigger is the app, Google form, the action is the Airtable. Now remember, I mentioned, as you're filling the form, you need the data to be sent synchronously to the Airtable base. That way, there isn't any loss of data. That way, every request is accounted for. Now, the trigger is your Google form, the action is your Airtable base. And for this Airtable is to create or update the time of request table. I'm not going to go over this because I've gone over this already. It's pretty much the same thing. You have your trigger, app, events, new form response, test the trigger, it must be successful. Then for the action, this time around, we're not using Gmail, your action is your Airtable. Now you notice that it's still the same sections. It's just that when you come to action, there's difference. You're not seeing to, you're not seeing BCC, you're not seeing from, no, in the contrary, you're seeing base. You select your employee time of, remember, you're selecting, not imputing. Pay attention to the word select. You select your employee time of Airtable base. You select the time of request table because you have different tables there. You have your manager, you have your employee, you have the time of request table. So you have to select the right table. You select the lookup field, and the lookup field should be a primary field, one that uniquely identifies the field. Identifies the data. So you select your employee email, which is the primary field. You select the secondary. You select your employee email, you select the employee ID, you select the reason for request, you select the request date. Now, when you go to default number of leave days, there's a difference. You are imputing, not selecting. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that this default number of leave days is constant for all employees. Remember, you select because each employee differs by each employee. There's always a difference, definitely, because our names won't be the same, our IDs won't be the same. So you're selecting a section of the form. But in this scenario, you're imputing because it's a constant for all employees, regardless of your ID, your name, your department, your gender, you're entitled to only maximum of 22 days per year. You select the leave to begin on from response to end on and request status. You also impute pending because by default of filling that form, defaults the primary status is going to show for each person is pending. You test the ZAP and you name and publish the ZAP. Then the third one is to automate emails to employee when manager has reviewed time of request. Your trigger is Airtable and your action is to send a Gmail. That's a notification to the employee that your manager has reviewed your time of request status and blah, blah, blah. This is what your manager said. The trigger is new updated Airtable record. The account in place of your personal Gmail is your G Airtable account because it's Airtable, not Gmail. Your trigger is the base, the employee time of base, the table, the employee time of table, the times table field. Now, this is used because the trigger is new updated Airtable record. So the ZAP needs to know when a record is updated. And that's why you have this timestamp field, which is this last modified time of the approval status, because the approval status determines when the email is going to be sent. So once the approval status is updated, it sends the ZAP immediately because it detects that a change has been done. And this change is definitely going to be made by your manager. Then you test it. Then the action is to send email. And the account is your Gmail account. Then the action to recipient's email, CC, the email of whoever you want to be CC'd or be CC'd. The from is the sender's email. The from name is the sender's full name, which is the manager's full name. Remember, you're selecting. Reply to you, you enter in the email address for replies. You're selecting the subject title of the email. In this scenario, you impute in the subjects. The body is a custom template, and it's called a custom template because it should be as generic as possible. It means that you shouldn't enter in a name of an employee because this is a template that's going to be sent to each and every employee. So it shouldn't have any particular employee's name there. It shouldn't have any employee's gender there because that particular template, for example, if it has female, it's going to also be sent when a male applies. So it should be as generic as possible. It shouldn't have anything specific. It should be as generic. It's a custom template. It should be generic. Then you have your label. For me personally, I prefer important because especially if a manager, you receive a lot of things and an employee applying for time off is quite important. So if I'm the one, I'm going to select important. So it helps you prioritize and put it at the top of your priority. And we have the attachments. Then we have the test and the name and publish your ZAP. Who is ZAP here again? Their time of request as a result of loops of the manager's oversight. Manual sending of voluminous employee time of request review. Repetitive tasks. Smarter work. Use ZAP here today.